Hi everyone, I'm Katie Couric, and I'm very proud to be interviewing my brother-in-law, who is being honored by the Boston Preservation Alliance, as well as his firm, Arrowstreet. Jim, it's great to have you. Welcome to my sofa.
Thank you.
I've known Jim, by the way, everyone, since I was 11 years old, so I can't believe I've known you for like 30 years, Jim.
Amazing.
How could that be? Anyway, I'm excited to be in conversation with my wonderful brother-in-law so everyone can get to know him a little bit better and learn more about the fantastic work he has done through the years. He's an amazing person, so he's very much deserving of this honor. Jim, you've done so many amazing projects and I think have improved the quality of life for so many Bostonians, I say very objectively. And I'm curious about the role that communities and neighborhoods have played in your work.
Yeah, community is like the starting point for virtually all of our projects. Arrowstreet's approach is to look at the location and the neighborhood, the people who live around it, as well as the uses that will be taking place on the site, and to think about it from that point of view first.
There are a lot of community projects that there are a few that you're particularly proud of, that you feel really reflected the values of the community. Can you tell us about a couple of those?
Sure. I mean, I would have to admit one of my favorite projects is called Artists for Humanity. It's a program for youths in the city of Boston, many of whom weren't necessarily having the easiest time in school, but this gives them a chance at kind of a new avenue. They can start by painting. They may initially make t-shirts. They may make murals on buildings. But the ideas are both to increase their confidence as an artist, but also their confidence at a skill set, which may help with employment or entrepreneurship. And we built a space for them that would enable them to have their programs.
I feel like you get the most satisfaction when your work is actually not just working with a physical space, but really enhancing and elevating the lives of people using those spaces.
Exactly, and a great thing about some of the projects, including that one, is there was a real interest on the part of the teenagers and the staff, we're only a couple years older than the teenagers, to participate in the design, and we had a great time doing that. We talked early about sustainability, which was growing awareness of the importance of that, and the students were all about that, pushed that hard. It was a huge success. The building was the first building in the city of Boston to be certified as a LEED Platinum building,
wow,
which is like a high watermark in sustainability. So that was great. Hyde Square Task Force is an organization that is in the Afro-Latin community of Jamaica Plain in Boston. And they also offer programs for school age and high school age kids. And in this case, there was an existing building, an old schoolhouse, which was good to have to start with, but actually old buildings can be incredibly difficult to work with. Really satisfying to see an old building of historic quality, although there was relatively little work we actually did on the historic stone on the outside, but we did preserve it, and we did get universal access. Another great example of a community-based project, this is the Dillway Thomas House, which got an award earlier. Arrowstreet has a small part in that project. We were part of a little more extended team providing support that enabled that project to come together.
And I'm curious how preservation figures into your work. I mean, it figures in it a lot, right?
It does. Sometimes it's clearest when we're working on a historic building. That's often not the case. Sometimes it's a historic neighborhood that we're working in, and that sets up a whole set of issues we have to be careful about. Other times it may just be a non-historic, but nevertheless highly functional part of the city of Boston, and we need to understand how we're doing impacts all that. We care about those neighborhoods. We care about the existing building stock. We're trying to both be a guardian of the past, but we're also trying to be guardians of the future.
So you really have to balance preservation and evolution in some ways and kind of really figure out that balance. And of course now, you know, for me, I know how important sort of these landmarks and these cultural centerpieces are in terms of projecting the values of a community on everybody who is in that space. You know, when I covered the Charlottesville Robert E. Lee statue, it made me realize how important, critically important public squares are in telegraphing the values of that community. And I'm sure that's something you think about all the time. But I, as somebody who, I don't have the background you do, obviously.
No, but you're totally right. Yeah.
Thank you. I usually am. Just kidding. But you know, I mean, I think more than ever, especially with our changing notion of history and how demographics are changing, I think, and people are becoming much more culturally sensitive. I'm sure that's something that you think about too. How do you place new buildings in historic neighborhoods and respect history, but also encourage progress and something that's modern?
The site we were working on is a very sensitive site because it's right next to what is really just a small shard of the oldest remaining old commercial buildings in the city of Boston, right down in the center. And there was a real concern on the part of the community, the state, the client, everybody. How do we put something like a vent building next to this intimate, small-scaled space? And it was fascinating. I think that it worked out pretty well. There was a decision to protect this small shard by giving the new building much of the same scale facade elements and a ground floor that was particularly sympathetic with the historic block next door. It was a combination of small-scale building elements wrapped around a ventilation structure that extended 3 large stories below ground and 6 stories above ground over 2 subway stations.
Wow.
So it was a very complicated piece of construction.
It still kept the character of the area kind of fluid and seamless, if you will.
It has, and it has, in my mind, been great that the ground floor occupant of the building is the public market, and they offer all sorts of wares, locally made, very intimate scale that really fits with the Blackstone block next door and its history. One other example is a building which we recently completed in downtown Boston, and it's interesting to look at. When you're walking towards it, it's quite something.
Dramatic.
It's very dramatic.
So it's really mixing the old with the new.
And I think when that's done well, it's great. And you get this kind of dialogue back and forth between the old and the new, which is great for a city, to make it possible to change and to have pieces that are very contemporary, comfortable with the historic building that is part of the character that everybody knows and loves.
Well, Jim Batchelor, it's been very nice talking to you. Congratulations to you and Arrowstreet on this award from the Boston Preservation Alliance. Give me 5. Nice job, Jim.